listeners, and welcome to the Downright Upright Show, the place to go to hear out loud and proud what Minnesotans are thinking. And I am your host, Philip Anthony. Thank you for joining us today, and I hope you're all doing fantabulous. Now, fantabulous is fantastic and fabulous put together twice as nice, so you don't have to. It saves time. I like to save time. My special guest today is running in the special election for the at-large Bloomington City Council seat. His name is Maxwell Collins, and full disclosure, Maxwell and I met at Bloomington Pride.
And it was a great time.
Didn't we all have fun?
Oh, yes.
It was great. So welcome to the Downright Upright Show, Maxwell.
Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. Anytime you want to come, you're my guest.
Oh, I'll definitely email you more.
Okay, great. So to start the show, is my usual custom that I ask guests foundational questions, a little bit about their background. So where were you born? Went to school? Any anecdotes you want to add to that?
Yeah. So I'll start off where I was born. I was born in Hopkins, Minnesota. So not exactly Bloomington, but my family moved to Bloomington in 2001. Been there ever since. Both sisters, actually, no, one sister lives in Bloomington. The other one lives here in Eden Prairie now for about a couple of years. Okay. I went to Kennedy High School in Bloomington. Went to Hamline University, got my bachelor's in political science, just recently graduated with my master's in public policy from the U of M.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. And I am an openly gay candidate for the city council. Oh my gosh.
Oh my God.
Who would have thought? And
gay?
Yes, 100%.
Would you like the fan?
Oh. Yeah. And otherwise, I've been pretty active in the city of Bloomington. I'm a DFL treasurer for the local Senate district there. I was a Parks and Recreation commissioner from 2016 to 2020. So I know my way around the community pretty well.
Yeah. What made you pick political science? Did you have it? Was that always your ambition, or was it?
Yeah. I would say it wasn't at first. When if you met me in high school, I would have been a physics major. If I went into college.
That's a big difference, huh?
It was a big difference. And then I believe when Trayvon Martin had, when those protests were going on down in St. Louis, I remember sitting on CNN and watching that and going, this is not the country that my dad told me it was. I started realizing that it was not number one. I grew up in that whole ideology of America's number one. It's the best country on the planet, yada, yada, yada. And then all of a sudden when that happened, I was like, if our country is so great, why is this happening? So then I sat there and said, well, no one's doing anything about this. Let me actually get involved. And the first thing I got involved with was the Parks and Recreation Commission in Bloomington.
Mm-hmm. And according to your bio, that's a good segue here. Yeah. According to your bio, it says that you served as Parks and Recreation Commissioner, let me get the years right, from 2016 to the present. You look young. I mean, I can't imagine. How old were you, 10 when you did this? Can you tell the audience, I can't say listeners anymore, because this is my first in-studio podcast.
Yeah, and congratulations on you.
Yeah, thank you so much. So can you tell the audience, I'm going to use that word now, a little bit about that experience being Parks and Rec? Like that show. I love that show, by the way.
Oh, I had so many people always ask me questions. Is it like the show? And I'm like, I'm not Leslie Knope or Ron Swanson. I would be in charge of the people who are Leslie Knope and Ron Swanson during that time.
Right.
So my experience with that was actually very foundational. It made me want to get into public policy and actually develop my love for politics and government even more so. So during that time, we redeveloped about, I think, around 50 to 90 playgrounds in the city of Bloomington. We have a lot of parks in Bloomington over a 3-year period. We looked at a community center that we did get some backlash on because we had a lack of community engagement. That top one of my main rules and one of my main priorities. If anyone wants to run, that is always the one thing I always go for: engagement. The other aspect is we redid a lot of little tiny programs like disposable waste when it comes to biodegradables and so forth, and getting that implemented and more expansion of the youth programs. So it gave me the foundations to realize on how to make policy and what are the impacts of it, and actually seeing it through and seeing what, how people relate to it and how they actually go about their daily business. It was very influential.
Yeah. Well, the thing that really fascinated me, because I'm not a Minnesotan by birth. I was born in New York City.
Good for you.
Yeah. And when I moved to Minnesota, the thing I noticed is all the parks that you
Yeah.
guys have, and they're so clean
Yeah.
and not crowded. And like you said, that they're there's a lot of accessibility to water and
Hmm.
things like that, which in New York, 9 times out of 10, you can go to a water fountain and the water is, and the swings are rickety. And when I moved here, I thought everything was so up to date.
Hmm.
Can you explain how that is there funding that you're getting for that? Is that what
So in this,
Minnesota provides, I guess?
yeah, it's kind of a mixture of both. A lot of the times with the funding, especially in the city of Bloomington, it comes directly from the city's taxpayers. So from the property taxes, I think the city spends between 13 to $20 million a year on their Parks and Rec programs. So it gives us the great opportunity to be able to keep our parks updated and maintained and everything along those lines.
Mhm.
But we do get like random grant funding from like the state of Minnesota. So there is a trail down by the Minnesota River bottoms um, that is funded by the city by the state taxpayers and by state bonding and state grants and so forth. So we do have a mixture of both. Like the three ballot measures coming up, that will be a sales tax. So like there's different ways that we can go about it in the city.
Yeah, and the thing that I find fascinating is there's a certain segment of the
Mhm.
population that they hate to pay taxes. It's
Yes.
just it's like, it's like pulling every follicle of hair out of their head. They hate it.
Hmm.
Excuse me. And I think it's wonderful that we have programs like that.
Hmm.
And what do you think? I mean,
Yeah.
isn't taxes important?
Yes. For me, I find it extremely important. When I was learning at the Humphrey School of Public Affairs at the U of M, they told us that your taxpayers or otherwise your budget is your values, and I still honestly believe that what you spend money on is what you care about as a community.
Right.
And when it comes to any type of taxpayers, especially in the city, that don't want to pay their taxes, how do you explain on funding the roads? How do you explain funding the sewers? Bloomington has one of the best water qualities in the country. How do you explain having that up to date and making sure that everything's safe? Along with public safety and like in the fire department and the police, so how do you make sure that's all funded? And if you don't want to pay your taxes, how would you go about that?
Yeah.
And I don't think there's any other way going about it. And there's something special in a government setting where you can sit there and say, I'm willing to put part of my income aside for the benefit of all the
Of
community,
the
just
community
not me.
itself, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have any children at all, and I'm very happy to pay taxes for other people's
Yeah.
children, for their education,
Yep.
for Parks and Rec, and all that stuff. I mean,
It's
it's just
investments.
it's just being part of the whole community, and that's why Minnesota is amazing to me. That's why when I moved here, I found
Yeah.
it fascinating that people are willing to part with some money so
Yeah.
that children have a good education, that the community's clean,
Hmm.
the parks are nice, et cetera, yada yada yada.
Yeah.
So yeah. All right. So now you have stated that you will vote yes for ballot measures 1, 2, and
Three.
3
Yep.
in Bloomington. Can you tell the audience a little bit about those ballot measures, like one at a time,
Yeah.
if you can, and why you will vote yes, why it's important to vote yes?
Yeah. So starting off with ballot measure one, I'm sorry if I do get them a little bit misplaced. They are a community center for, I think, ballot measure one. We're looking at redeveloping our old community center, which is an old renovation from an old elementary school that is no longer in use. And the building's becoming dilapidated. And the city wants to turn it into something that is not only mainly a senior center, but is a multi generational center. So, like an actual community center, along with the public health department, because we have a public health department in Bloomington, and they are also in a building that's pretty dilapidated as well and is falling apart, and they need more expansion. They have more employees now, and they just need to get a bigger building. So putting the two together, the city finds to be a very unique resource. So I find that one to be especially very special in my heart, because that's something that I originally worked on as a Parks and Recreation Commissioner. The reason why I'm voting yes on it, because it does bring investment into the city. It is able to expand our programs on the Parks and Youth side of it.
Mhm.
Um, and it brings people for like community education and other things that a lot of cities do provide, but necessarily don't have the space for. So it is very important for that one to get passed. When it comes to ballot measure 2, we're talking about our ice arena that we have in Bloomington. We call it big. It's Bloomington Ice Gardens. Um, that part that needs 100% needs to be able to get passed because of the Bloomington Ice Gardens. You want to talk about a dilapidated building? It's pretty much falling apart. The equipment that is in the building that keeps the ice actually cooling is so outdated that we have to buy the cooling liquid for that equipment to keep the ice formed on secondhand markets. So
Hmm.
you can't directly buy it from anyone anymore. We have to buy it from other cities and other agencies or anyone who randomly has it laying around. So that actually has to get passed and is able to be funded for. And then when it comes to ballot measure 3, this one gets a little bit more controversial with a lot of residents. So we're
Okay, tell
talking,
us.
yeah, so we're talking about the 9 Mile Creek corridor.
Say
uh,
it again. What's that?
the 9 Mile Creek corridor. So it's 9 Mile Creek that goes through Bloomington. There's about 3 parks that are along it, and it's a lovely like nature-esque corridor. So you can't sit there and have any type of really big development in there. So it's um, a lot of trees and a lot of wildlife and native vegetation that's down there. And they're planning to update the trails so they're no longer unpaved but paved and connects to the Minnesota River Valley Trail that's going along the Minnesota River. And a lot of people are concerned about the expansion of not only paving it, but also the city is adding a bike path in there. So a lot of people are discussing whether or not if we should have a bike path. And the reason why I voted yes on it is because there's other things to it. So like updating the playground in there, updating the building that's, think they call it like a picnic shelter that's at Moyer Park. And I believe also a lot of bridges and pathways that are up there. But also the one key thing is a lot of native vegetation and wildlife restoration will be going on there, and I find that to be the most important thing. So I always tell people, I said I'm voting yes for the overall picture of it, but when it comes to the bike path part, we can sit there and rediscuss as a community whether or not if we want to be changing this. Because really, at the end of the day, the 3 ballot measures are just draft versions of what the city is trying to get done, and things can be negotiated and changed on there.
Yeah, and a bike path. I mean, I know for a fact there are certain cities that are considered the most bike friendly,
Yeah.
and Minneapolis is one of them,
Yes.
and Bloomington, and
Yeah.
all the other suburbs of Minneapolis and St. Paul. And yeah, and it's good to promote exercise.
Hmm.
It's good to promote health. The paths are wonderful. What if there's an elderly person
Yeah.
who needs to walk, and the path is not
Then not that good.
fixed?
Yep.
So it's all for safety too, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I looked at it mainly from an ADA standpoint to pave the rest of the trail because for me, I want people who cannot physically get down there to
Yeah,
actually experience the Minnesota River, to experience 9 Mile Creek, because it is kind of down in a bluffy area. It's hard to get to,
right.
and making it ADA accessible and making it safer for walkers does make it more accessible for the overall community for people to enjoy. I don't think that the city's going to go in there and destroy anything. That's the opposite of what the ballot measure actually says on there and
Hmm.
what they're presenting.
Then nature is going to be preserved.
Preserved.
You're not going to touch the trees or anything like that.
Yeah, and there's some people who are concerned about like the trees cutting if we were going to put a bike path down there because we'd have to expand the path. But I sit there and goes like, if that's the case, well, we can always move it. We can move the bike path along Lindale because Lindale goes all the way down to the river. So we can have an actual separate bike path that's on that road going down to the river. That could be an option, and
Yeah,
other options that other community members or city staff or other council members want to look at.
right. But you use the word interesting. You use the word controversial.
Yeah.
I don't know why that would be controversial, but silly me, I'm
Uh,
just
y-
Philip. But
yeah.
why did you use that terminology for that project?
Yeah, because you do have, I would say it's almost split down party lines in this aspect in the city of Bloomington. So I always tell people, I said, even though city elections are nonpartisan, they are definitely partisan. Um, when it comes to it going down partisan lines, is that the Republicans in the city of Bloomington are on the side of making sure that the pathway doesn't gets paved
Mhm.
and that the bike path doesn't go through and make sure that 9 Mile stays as 9 Mile. Um, and partially that's due to their like financial conservatism that they want to have, which one of my priorities is financial responsibility, but I look at it also as like it's an investment and probably will bring us some money back as people coming in there, and you get more visitors
You
going to the
think?
city and
Yeah.
everything. Yeah. And then the other part that's controversial is that they hold on to it. So it makes it difficult for the city council, who are mostly liberal, who are mostly progressive, and trying to get these subjects done or these projects done. It gets this little battle going on. And people try to point out that, like, oh, it might have not been transparent or anything like that. Whereas the city did present a lot on it. The city did a lot of community engagement to get these ballot measures to the point where they're at. And the transparency, I feel like people just don't really see it when they read the actual ballot measure, because you can't really put every detail of a project in there. And the city wants to have this be more of a draft and have it be more vague than an actual thing. So that's why I tell people, I said, these 3 ballot measures is a general idea of what you want to do with your money. After that, the city will come to you and ask you, what exactly
You're
do you
going to
want to see
tweak
in there?
it later.
You can
Yeah.
tweak it. And that's where I
Yeah.
go, the bike path can be moved.
Absolutely.
And I feel like a lot of people don't understand that portion of it. So I want to make sure that they understand that part. And going from there, that's what kind of makes it controversial, is because they're having misinformation and not being told that this might be a draft, or some miscommunications going on there,
Yeah.
where it creates it into a controversial thing. And
Yeah.
partially, some of it could be NIMBYism as well.
Yeah. Wow. Anyway, personally, I think those 3 ballot measures are amazing.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, that you're voting yes. If I was in your position, I would too.
Yeah.
I mean, to make the community a better place for everyone,
Yeah.
for elderly, for kids, for
Yeah.
everybody, I don't see a problem with that. Again, like I said to you before, I pay taxes for schools and for, parks and all that, and I have no children.
Yeah.
But I just want a nice community. I want other people's children, because they're the future too, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't understand this whole thing with my money, my money, my money.
Mm-hmm.
When you're living in a community and you're all together,
Yeah,
why
100%.
you would want people to live have terrible parks and unsafe walkways
Ways
and
and stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm with you
And to
100%.
touch like on the money part of it, like the sales tax, we have the Mall of America. That's not a hidden secret. So
Mhm,
most of the money that will be coming out of the sales tax will be coming out of visitors who go to the Mall of America. It's
mhm.
I think the city came to a conclusion it'll be around 66% of the sales tax will be paid for by um, visitors who go to the mall. The U of M said around 75%. So as a community, I find that to be an absolutely good financial decision to make. Because if we didn't have that and we had to pay it through property taxes, it'd be a lot more.
Yeah. I Like I said, good for you.
Thank you.
I would do the same exact thing. So if you're elected to the Bloomington City Council, what are some of the priorities you will undertake once in office? So I know you have many, because I did a lot of legwork on you.
I'm kind of like Elizabeth Warren with the amount of priorities that I have on there.
Yeah. So maybe you can succinctly enumerate them for the audience. Like, what are some of the priorities you have?
Yeah, so on my website I have 8, but when I go talk to people, I summarize it in about 4 points. So I have economic development and financial responsibility. So the economic development part is small business development. The city has a lot of big businesses. I want to make sure that small businesses are able to be thriving. So putting more money into the small business center that's going up in Bloomington, relooking at ordinances that might prevent small businesses from developing, or getting rid of those barriers that prevent someone from actually setting up a small business here in Bloomington. Because that's a lot of money to do undertaking, especially when it's a certain little thing. Like we have a very famous business in Bloomington for Bloomington residents. It's called Luna. Sorry, Luna de Luna. I always forget about the de Luna part. And and he had
Luna means moon, doesn't it?
moon. Yeah. I don't
Mhm.
know what the de Luna part means
Of
though.
the moon, the
Oh,
moon of the moon.
the moon of the moon.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
I took Spanish, so I know.
The more you know. And anyways, so so he had some issues with the city that cost him tens of thousands of dollars, and he's a small business owner. He does not have that money. That like makes or breaks it for you.
Mhm.
And my heart goes out to him and a lot of other small businesses that run into some fees and ordinances that I don't think necessarily need to be there. The other ones is like financial responsibility, making sure that the city's budget is balance, making sure that every tax dollar goes to benefiting all the residents in Bloomington, just not one location or another. Other priorities are community engagement and infrastructure investment. Community engagement, obviously, from my times as a Parks and Recreation Commissioner, and even now with that ballot measure 3, you as a city official, you have to make sure that you're engaging 100% of the time with all the residents, no matter if you disagree with them or not. And that's what I always tell people. I said, I'm upfront, I'm a Democrat, I'm a liberal, but I'm willing to listen to Republicans who stay in Bloomington
A
because,
liberal.
oh no. And I want to make sure that they're sitting there and being
Yeah.
listened to because it's still their community and their input should be valid.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to the infrastructure update, the city was built all at the same time in the 70s and 60s. We went from 5,000 some odd people up to 80,000 in a 10-year span. So all that infrastructure is going to go to hell in a handbasket pretty quickly.
Hmm.
And as an aspect of that, we want to make sure that we are planning rigorously to update that and kind of work at it slowly, so that way we're not increasing people's property taxes when it does all decide to fail at the same time.
Hmm.
The other one is Bloomington's environment. So I look at it 2 ways. Bloomington's physical environment, so protecting the green spaces and the natural spaces, using spaces that are no longer used by recreation, turn it more into natural vegetation and
Awesome.
wildlife.
Yeah.
And then also climate change. That's the second part. And making sure that the city is transitioning over into renewable sources of energy, making sure that residents have resources and pathways, either working with the state government or foundations and nonprofits to see if we can provide financial resources if they want to put up a solar panel on their house, they can,
Yeah.
without throwing out thousands of dollars. And a lot of times Bloomington residents don't have those thousands of dollars up front to be able to do so.
There's so much
Yeah.
misinformation about progressives. You were talking about attracting business. I mean, if you have a good environment and it's a clean city,
Yeah.
everything's up to date. It attracts business.
Yeah.
It's not anti-business,
No, it
right?
brings people in, and if you bring
Exactly.
people
Yeah.
in, you're gonna get businesses in and jobs in and everything else. So in a weird way, not to try to change your community that you live in is the detriment. Like I always tell people, I said, if your community is declining in population or your community is declining in whatever, you're pretty much starting down the path of your community dying out. And I don't want to see Bloomington dying out. I want to see Bloomington to be able to be the place that people can call home, be welcomed, and be thriving and having every opportunity that I had growing
Mhm.
up there as a kid.
Yeah, awesome. I love I love the fact that we are able to succinctly talk about business because the Republicans are trying
Hmm.
to say we're trying to kill business.
Yeah.
It's our mission, which is dumb. I mean, business is what attracts. I mean, a good environment attracts business,
Hmm.
and then people will come, and more people will come, and more people will
People
come,
come. Yeah. And with that, like
etc.
I'll just say, just look at Minneapolis itself and even Bloomington and St. Paul. You have big businesses there. They're democratic strongholds for, especially Minneapolis and St. Paul, for well over 100 years.
Hmm.
How do you explain that you get these big businesses coming in there if
Yeah.
Democrats are so anti-business?
Thank you. I mean, every big city in the United States has
Yeah.
businesses, more businesses than in the rural areas,
Yeah.
because, but anyway, that's we're beating a dead horse. We're preaching to the choir
Sorry.
to each
Yes.
other here. Yeah.
Yes, we are.
So anyway, so you have been endorsed
Yes.
by some very influential people, and I applaud that.
Yeah.
One example would be the mayor of Richfield. Her
Yeah.
name is Mary Supple. She endorsed you. And would you like to mention other endorsements you have received up to now,
Yeah.
and unions and other
And
people that are endorsing your organizations
yeah.
in general? Yeah.
So so the biggest one that I'm actually pretty proud of, because I'm a former union member myself with a local UFCW 663, and the Teamsters local is it the Teamsters Joint Council 32 union endorsed me. So they represent Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota,
Awesome. Yeah.
and that one I'm very proud of because that was the one I tried to hit on very early on, and it just tells me that my vision for Bloomington is going in the right direction. Especially being a former union employee and getting endorsed by them means a lot personally to me. Other members who are big in the community, at least, is Donovan Indovino Colley. He's a chair of SD 51 DFL, so I got endorsed by him. Other areas that I'm looking for endorsement, hopefully I hear back from the Victory Fund, which is the LGBTQ plus Victory Fund. That's a national fund, and they endorse local LGBTQ candidates across the country, either from local to federal to state level races. And that would mean a lot to me as well.
Yeah, awesome. So, can you discuss being a member of the LGBTQ?
Yeah.
Segueing into that.
Yeah.
It's amazing how my guidelines always
Oh,
work
it
out
just
that
works
way.
out timely.
I'm good at what I do. Am I not?
Oh, I hope so. You're a professional, right?
Can you discuss being a member of the LGBTQ community? Running a campaign, and what are some of the benefits and some of the obstacles you
Yeah.
have faced?
So some of the benefits that I've seen is that you don't really have to tell anyone that you're a Democrat right off the bat, especially if they find out that you're a part of the LGBTQ plus community. Even though I still tell people right off bat that I'm a Democrat, um, I would say that that is the biggest benefit. The other, I would say, the other part that I guess might be a non-benefit or obstacles that I face is when I'm actually door knocking because I don't know who I exactly door knocking on the doors with when I'm talking to people. So I don't really mention that that I'm openly gay with a partner. I just kind of let people discover that for
That's so
themselves. They go on the
unfortunate.
website. I said on my website it has a picture of me and my partner on there. So if they have an issue with that, they have an issue with it. When I'm at someone's door, I'm not trying to talk about my personal life. I'm there talking about how they want to see the community as.
Mhm.
So sometimes I do run into people who might be a little bit transphobic or immensely transphobic or who are immensely homophobic and racist and so forth. And that's a lot of the problems that I run into. And just trying to get out of that conversation as quickly as possible. It's a lot of, I'd say it's a lot of people pleasing at the end of the day and trying to make sure that you don't get run over or having any type of physical involvement going on. And just being like, okay, sir or ma'am, you have a nice day. All right. I'll keep your input in mind.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, or also knowing in the city of Bloomington, we have some radicals who absolutely do not like the Bloomington Pride event. And for me, I find the Bloomington Pride event to be very important. I find any Pride event.
Moms for Liberty.
Oh yes, and the
Talk
moms for
about that.
yes. So talking about that radicals part, the Moms for Liberty with banning books, we're seeing them targeting our school board in the city of Bloomington, and trying to get them to ban uh, homosexual and trans books in the city and LGBTQ books as well, and all sorts of other cases, only because they find it to be irreprehensible or um, too sexual or demonizing or whatever it is. And the biggest problem that I have with them is like, how would your kids ever know? How do they feel? What if one of your kids at home happened to be gay or happens to be trans or happens to be what other community member of the LGBTQ community, and you're not validating them or they're not trying to understand? And also, this is America. At the end of the day, we don't try to ban books here. I don't view this country as
That's
banning
fascist,
books.
if you
It
ask
is.
me.
It is purely fascist.
That's the definition of fascism.
You have
Banning books.
you have these people who are coming in and trying to ban books like as if it is the 1930s,
It
and
won't
I'm
make
like,
their kids gay. If they're already gay, they're going to be gay.
yeah,
Nothing's going
yeah,
to nothing. If anybody should be straight, it should be me. I grew up in a Catholic family. I was an altar boy. I tell this on all my shows. I didn't get a ballot when I was born to check off. Are you
oh
going to
yeah.
be straight? You want to be gay?
Oh no, you just find out. You just find
I
out, and
mean,
you're
it's
like,
so
oh
absurd. Anyway,
yeah,
now we have come to the part of the show
woo,
I like to call the shift.
the shift.
But
Ooh.
please make sure that you pronounce the F, otherwise we have problems, okay?
Okay,
It's the shift.
the
Okay.
shift.
Where we shift the questioning away from your personal journey
Mhm.
and we talk about your opinions on current events.
Okay,
So it's kind of like all about you now, your thoughts.
my thoughts.
That's why it's
Okay,
what,
we might be here all day if you talk about current events and my thoughts.
well, that's why this show is all about what Minnesotans are thinking, and you're in
Mhm.
Minnesota, and I want to know what you're thinking. So this is your opinion,
All
chance
right.
to express them. So as you know, the Republican-controlled House is ready to shut down the government if the Democrats in the House and Senate don't meet their demands. What do you believe the implications will be to Minnesotans and to all Americans if the Republicans succeed in shutting it down?
First off, my heart would go out to all the employees who work for the federal government because they're the first ones who will be implicated and
Absolutely.
having those problems right off the bat. They're not going to get those paychecks. They're not going to get that money coming in to be able to support their families. It's not like every federal employee is a millionaire. Like they're not. They are middle class or lower income people who just do the
Working class.
job, who
Yeah.
care.
Hmm.
They're working class. And that has big implications. And going stemming from that, you have implications when it comes to services. As a government, I always view government as a tool to make people's lives better. And if you're no longer having that interaction with them or having that level of services there, you're going to be having issues. So when it comes to the VA hospitals or the healthcare facilities that are funded by the federal government, you're going to have some issues there. Or when it comes to transportation and other government entities, those services are not going to be there, and that's very wide and broad, and it can go into multiple different areas. I think the only thing that's not going to be shut down is the DoD, and they always do that. The military is always up and running, but
Of course. Yeah.
yeah, but all the non-discretionary, like Department of Education, that's not going to be up and running, handling people's student loans and stuff like that. So that's the problem that you run into is the government won't be helping out the people when people need them the most, especially with the recent inflation that we've had and the recent economic downturn and the recent COVID-19 pandemic. People still need help from the government at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. But Republicans are so anti-government,
Yeah.
and that's where you can get into that avenue where you can become fascist, because
Yeah.
fascist governments are anti-government. They want to control the
Yeah.
whole thing, not you.
Which is the opposite of what they're suggesting.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about like anti-government, but then they want to control the whole thing, I'm like, well, that's Big Brother in itself. I
Yeah.
don't,
Well, yeah.
I'll quote Ronald Reagan in that, and like, stay out of our lives. And I feel like most liberals and most Democrats just want to be helped, and even most Americans just want to be helped out and just continue their day-to-day lives without much interference.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when you have the Republicans who are sitting there saying that, you're going to get the opposite.
Yeah. Why is it always like the working class that they have a problem helping, but rich people and huge corporations cut their taxes,
Oh yeah,
make them pay zero. It's just so
it's a lot.
Yeah, it's very depressing to me. I don't know. Besides the deep budget cuts, the
Mhm.
Republican-controlled House has included in their demands to prevent a government shutdown the passing of a bill that requires restarting construction of the border wall. That's one of them.
Mhm.
And also adding strict restrictions to asylum. So people that want asylum, so making it very, very hard for them
Yeah.
uh, to ask for asylum. So among other measures, however, missing from the bill are provisions requiring e-verify. So they don't want to put that in the bill, which would say to a company, you can't hire somebody. So they're against people coming in, but they're
Yeah.
not against people that are
That
they're
that are already
employing them
here.
to save
Yeah.
money. Yeah. So what are your thoughts on that?
I find that to be extremely hypocritical.
Big time.
In the
Yeah.
United States, the only reason why our population is growing is because of our immigration. And when you bring more people into a society, the more it thrives,
Mhm.
especially with jobs that typical everyday Americans don't want to have anymore.
People wouldn't come here
Yeah.
if a company was not allowed to hire those people. The draw is they don't want to put that in
In the
one
bill.
of the bills.
And
Yeah.
another thing is, like, if you restrict those people from coming in, those companies are going to eventually run into extremely tight, like, labor market where there's no one for them to hire
Personally,
because
I
they're
think
hiring
yeah,
them.
personally, I think they're secretly wanting them to come over the border
Yeah.
because it gets cheap labor.
Yes. Bingo.
You don't have to pay people anything,
You get
paying you minimum wage and then paying somebody $3
dollars
an
an
hour.
hour. Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
It's a big difference.
Of course.
Yeah.
So to preface this question, I just want to say that I'm totally against ageism. So before you think I'm an ageist, well, I am not, because I happen to be 63 years old. I know I look beautiful, but no, just kidding. As you know, President Biden is 80 years old.
Yep.
He's quite svelte. He jogs.
Hmm.
He rides a bike
He does a lot better than me.
often. Yeah. And he has been traveling all over the globe on behalf of the country. You see him every time you turn around,
He's somewhere else.
he's in Ukraine. He was in Japan. I mean, he's all over,
Yeah.
right? Meanwhile, back at the ranch. No, meanwhile, the twice impeached, 4 times indicted ex-president. He's 77, so
Mhm.
that's not quite, a
Age
whippersnapper.
difference.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. He eats fast food every day.
Yeah.
Okay. Has trouble formulating cohesive sentences.
Mhm.
He needs help walking down a ramp.
Mhm.
And it has been reported he can't even lift a glass to his mouth to drink because it was on tape. Did you
Well,
see that? What?
I
What?
didn't see that part, but I would say that's probably more of a preference than versus his ability to do it. I would not be surprised if he made someone do it out of his ego.
I don't know, but well, no, he does it himself. Like in
Oh,
other words,
okay.
like I drink the water like
Like
this,
that, yeah.
right? He needs to do this to lift the bottle up.
Oh, I
This
would
is
just say that's him
report.
trying to be bougie as hell.
Oh, I don't know. Well, he thinks he is, but no. But the whole deal is like I can't compare the two. I mean,
Mhm.
3 years difference in age shouldn't make a difference
Mhm.
when it comes to who's more into health and who isn't.
Yeah.
But so why do you think there is a double standard when it comes to President Biden and crickets when it comes to the ex-president?
I'd
That's
say
just my
like
question.
I would just say it just comes down to more of the partisan politics that are in the United States. You have the Republicans who want their main guy in there who seems to be like the next Jesus for them.
Hmm.
And President Biden's everything that they despise. And I would say it's probably more of an envy thing. In my personal opinion, Biden's done more for the country than Trump has, and has done a lot more than since a lot of more recent presidents have.
In a bipartisan way
In a
too.
you have the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, you have the
Yeah.
CHIPS Act, you have the Inflation Reduction Act, which are all $100 billion plus bills who are doing a
Cutting
lot
the
of events,
Yeah,
cutting
cutting the
green
price of insulin
insulin
to
down.
$35.
Yeah,
I mean, God.
it's a lot of help there. And along with that, he's out there pushing his foreign policy and helping in the war with Ukraine. I'm for helping the war in Ukraine because this is not World War III again. We don't need a World War II style scenario. So we need to make
I
sure
totally agree.
certain countries are put in their place. And
You know why I agree?
why?
Because if anybody is educated and they look back at World War
Hmm.
II, the last World War we had, um, we saw Neville Chamberlain
Yep.
appease Hitler.
Yep.
And when Churchill came in,
Yep.
he said,
No, he told
"We
them
will
that
get you on the seas,
is,
and we will get you on the
we
I
will
don't
be
remember.
everywhere where you think you where we're gonna
Right.
be.
And it turned around, and the Allies ended up winning the
Mhm,
war.
war, yeah.
Could you imagine if we just didn't let Hitler just take over I mean,
Oh yeah,
come on now, guys.
yeah.
You have to stop authoritarian
Regimes from doing their
regimes
things.
from
Yeah.
taking over sovereign countries. You have to, otherwise, because the next step is going to be China taking over
They're
Taiwan.
Taiwan. And I was even disappointed
Yeah.
with our response into Hong Kong when they started going to Hong Kong a bit and exerting control. I was very much about watching that because I look at it as
Yeah.
on the fringes of our democratic society are being challenged by these countries. And if you don't do anything to do about it, then what is the point of creating the magnificent culture that we have, having this diversity of race, religion, and society here in the
Yes.
United States, and making sure that we live our way of life when you have Russia trying to go into Ukraine that's just trying to live their own thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
or China going into Taiwan.
Yeah. Boy, we agree on everything. This is scary.
Oh, apparently, apparently so. Who would have thought?
But my final question on the show today is now you will be if you do win, you
Mhm.
will be the second LGBTQ gay
Yep.
male to be in that office in city council.
Yeah.
Correct? Is that?
Yeah, that'd be correct.
So I want to talk about every show. I always talk about LGBTQ issues because I happen
To be
to be one, a real person,
wow.
not one of these
The
crazy
crisis actors.
crisis actor. Yeah, I'm not a what do they call them? What are those deviants that the right tries to portray us as? So
I just say that's always a compliment when someone calls me a deviant from the right
oh
as being
geez.
gay. I'm like, if it was me being born turns me into a deviant, my God, I wonder what my personality's like then.
I know. So according to the organization, the Movement Advancement Project, I don't know if you heard about them, but because of the Don't Say Gay laws,
Mhm.
11 states ban simply the discussion of LGBT people, just discussion,
Yeah.
just to talk about them. It has nothing to do with sex, people,
Mhm.
it's just discussion. Like my mommies are, I have two mommies, or I have can't talk about that.
Yeah.
That's so what is that trying to tell the children? That we're less than?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
In my book, anyway. So author Mark Tyler Nobleman, I think I pronounced his name right, was supposed to talk to kids about the secret co-creator of Batman with the aim of inspiring young students in Atlanta to do research and write. So it was he was there to make an inspirational talk, or to do an inspirational talk to the students. So soon thereafter, the school district told him that he had to cut out a key point from his presentation, that the artist that he helped rescue from obscurity had a gay son. So the fact that this man
Yeah.
had a gay son, he couldn't talk.
Yeah,
He
he
had to
couldn't
just
talk about
take
it.
that part out, the gay
Yep.
son. All right. So rather than acquiesce, he canceled the remainder of his talks. Bravo.
Yeah, I would say good for him. Good for him. Standing up
Absolutely.
and not doing
He
anything else.
stood up
Yeah.
for his.
He stood up for what he believed in,
what he
and for his
believed in.
son.
And for the gentleman's son,
Son,
yes.
yes.
So what are your thoughts about this? And do you feel more and more speakers invited to schools will refuse to do so because of these don't say gay laws?
I would definitely say with the don't say gay laws, you would kind of find more people not trying to go to these schools or go to these states and try to talk about what is important at the end of the day is people's like relations and their personalities and so forth. When you're talking about the LGBTQ community, you're not talking about them. You're talking about their humanity and who they represent, and they need to be heard. Only because I'm biased, because I'm gay myself, but we need to be heard, and everybody needs to have a chance to tell their story. And once you start not talking about a certain demographic of society, then you're going backwards. And in my viewpoint, when I hear these laws start deciding to go down that pathway, when are they going to stop? Are they going to only stop with the LGBTQ community? I would say they're probably not going to stop. They're probably going to keep going further and further back, because at the end of the day, when they say make America great again, all I hear is make America back to the 1950s again, when only white middle class um, voters are the ones who have all the power, and that is it. And that's where I'm like, no, that is not the America that is today. We have more diversity now than ever. We had diversity then. We need to make sure that everybody's heard. If you want to call us a republic, we still vote for our representatives. Everybody should have a say.
They want to put us back in the closet,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah, and I'm not willing to go back in the closet. That was
Yeah.
a dreadful time.
Oh my goodness. And it's the 70s when I grew up. It took me a really long time to accept myself because of
Yeah.
all the negativity I was hearing.
hmm
You know what I'm saying, Maxwell?
Yeah.
Today, I think I don't want to say that I paved the way personally, but
But it's your generation, and I
my
thank your generation for
the
doing that.
generation before
them.
that,
Yep.
they were there in the streets fighting.
Oh yeah.
You know, when AIDS came out, when AIDS became a scourge on our community, nobody was going to fight to save our people, our community, except us. And the ally, we did have allies, I must say.
But like,
So we need to speak out whenever this stuff happens.
You got to.
That's why I have this show.
Yeah, and I'm thankful that you have that show and that you're willing to speak out, because a lot of people don't. And I always make this one joke with people. I said, never try to shove the LGBTQ community back into the corner, because you'll just end up throwing a brick at you.
Oh my goodness, that's a good way to put it.
To reference Stonewall there.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing too, when I grew up, I remember people saying, "Are you gay? So are you the man or the woman?"
Oh God, I'm
that's
no,
how far back I go, because nobody asked me that anymore, thankfully.
I was gonna say 10 years ago, I still had people ask me that.
You did?
Yeah, I would still have people ask me if I was in a relationship, who is the man or who's the woman, or even when I wasn't in a relationship, they would still ask me, and I go, I'm gay for a reason. I want a man and a man in a relationship.
There's so much ignorance when it comes to our community, and I think again, it's because we're not out there enough. I don't think there's, for example, I'm a gay man. I have this show. Okay. Now we have Ellie Krug. She's a trans woman that has a show here on AM 950. We have JP Berger-Hosian. He is also in the queer community. But that's it. And you don't see very much on regular television or shows about our community.
Or it's portrayed by straight actors on television.
Well, yeah. And Yeah, and it took a lot of fighting for our
Yeah.
community, even just to get married, to be able to get
Get
married.
married.
I'm
Yeah.
married
Yeah.
because of the DFL and
Yeah.
because of Democrats, not because of Republicans.
And also because of yourself, because your generation and the previous generations fought for it.
Right, right, right. But
Yeah.
I mean, but just think of this though. Just suppose that 2015, when marriage was passed
Hmm.
in the Supreme Court, just suppose we had this Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Do you
No,
think I'd be
I
married now?
no, but luckily I live in the state of Minnesota that passed a law that says otherwise.
Yeah, but the law shouldn't change because you put
Yeah.
different people for same
No,
thing
but
with abortion. Yeah, I mean,
it would be scary. It would be very scary for the ones who live in states like Texas, like Florida, that won't be able to get married.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
But the thing is, the law never changed. The law has been consistent
yeah,
over these years, especially with abortion. I hate to go
yeah,
back to abortion,
yeah,
but Roe versus Wade, and then there was another case that upheld Roe versus Wade in the 90s. I can't remember
yeah,
the name of it off the top of my head, but it buttressed
yeah.
Roe versus Wade. Double precedent
Hmm.
we had, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the ex-president, Voldemort, I like to call him. I never say his name. I really don't. But he just decided to put 3 people in there,
Yeah.
thanks to Mitch McConnell, who wouldn't put President
Oh yeah.
Obama's appointment, even give him a hearing. It was pretty much ahead of time. The Federalist Society
Yeah.
had this whole thing planned out.
Hmm.
So now we have 3 different people put into that court.
Yeah.
Disregarded double precedent.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
And now
because-
and now even affirmative action is not even a thing anymore,
Yeah.
because you just put 3 people in there who happen to not think that African Americans should be given
Yeah.
a little hand up because of all the drama they went
Yeah.
through throughout history.
And I would even say, like, an example out of those 3 people, I think one of which is it Amy Comey Barrett, who doesn't have a law degree or something like that, where she's like not educated enough for her to be,
Yeah,
my personal
I wouldn't
opinion,
be surprised.
to be in there. I know there's one who isn't, and it's like, how did you
Yeah.
manage to pick her?
Yeah.
But
I don't know. Anyway, so unfortunately, Maxwell, we've run out of time on
Darn.
the Downright Upright show today.
Well, it's been a great time.
Oh my God. I just
been
want to
lovely.
thank you so much, Maxwell, for being a guest on my show. I think you are amazing. We have almost the same policy issues. I mean, because again, we're both progressive, but sometimes you can diverge. I have friends
You
that
have the moderate Dems, and then you have me, where
exactly.
I'm
I
hanging
have
out with
friends
Bernie.
that don't agree with the Ukraine war. I'm funding it, but I do, because I am not a Neville Chamberlain. I'm a Winston Churchill person.
Yeah.
So, and I just want to say personally, good luck on your campaign.
Thank you.
I really am hoping that everybody in Bloomington gets out to vote. Now, election day in Bloomington is when now? It's,
November 7th.
November 7th.
Yeah.
And it's a special election, right?
It is a special election, even though all council members up there, so my term would only be 2 years.
And then you have to run again next year.
Yeah,
and you'll
pretty
be
much.
back here again.
I'll be back here again. I'll be annoying you again.
No, never. There's no way you could annoy me. So for more information on Maxwell's campaign and how you can donate or volunteer or have a one-on-one, you even do one-on-ones, which
I
is
do.
amazing.
Yeah, that's the first thing I started with, is the one-on-ones, because I want
would
to talk
love
to
that.
people.
Yeah, thank you. Beautiful. So go to maxforbloomington.com and you can either volunteer, again, donate, or do have a one-on-one, so you can ask questions.
Be coffee or beer, it's up to you. I know I've had some people ask about beers, and I'm like, yeah, I'll go out.
I
and have
love
a beer with you.
but I'm on medication, so I have to stop. Maybe next year when I'm off the medication, I'll be able to do it. And finally, thank you to the audience out there for joining us today on the Downright Upright show. Love you guys. It's my first in-studio show, and I love you all, wherever you are. And my name is Philip Anthony. And I want to say thank you again. I can't stop saying thank you to everybody out there, and to Maxwell, and
thank you.
Every DFLer out there. Go out
Yeah.
and vote. And I just have to say thank you and ciao for now.